The fact that the planets technically do not revolve around the sun is a true unknown to many. To this day, I can still see high school textbooks saying otherwise, but now you know better. And you can never unknow it. See, people have this habit of chasing after some form of truth. The longing, the thirst to know everything worth the intrigue. Truth about the beginning of the universe, and the truth about the thing we call consciousness. The truth about death and what lies beyond. The list goes on, and it is evident both on the face of history and in the pages of fiction. And we all chase it. The search for the truth, as we so dramatically put it. It is something hardwired into our very humanity to know, discern, to explain the universe around him. For it is only with knowledge that he survives. It is only with knowledge that he conquers. For him, the unknown poses the ultimate threat. The unknown is the enemy, and flawed as he is, humanity is right about that one thing. The unknown inspires fear over what it conceals behind its veil, over what lurks just out of sight. Maybe it's better that way, that we do not know, that we do not witness, because once you do, you can never unsee them again. 7 years ago, I was what you would call a BMS operator. It stands for Building Monitoring System, in one of my city's tallest commercial buildings. It was not a job that promised much career growth, but it paid the bills and was pretty much something you grew into once you'd get the hang of it. The job was a two-man post, divided into the day shift and the graveyard shift. All you had to do was monitor the CCTVs, the HVAC, the fire detection and alarm, the elevators, the water supply. Basically everything that keeps a building alive and functional. Things were all sunshine and daisies. On normal days, we worried about the most mundane things, maintenance reports, updating permits, your everyday household pests. But on exciting ones, we get to deal with an elevator out of control, leaking water pipes and fire alarms. Or a daylight robbery. Everything was over by the time I reported for duty. It was the graveyard shift and we were left to scour and review the CCTV feeds for an incident report to the top management, as was protocol. Kurt and I divided the task. He reviewed the cameras inside the classy diner that was robbed, while I reviewed the cameras from the alfresco tables outside. It was with morbid curiosity that I flicked through the camera angles, searching for something the local law enforcement might have not previously seen that morning. How did they execute that? In that 2-minute window during which the guards posted had changed shifts, which was always a random time known by only a select few, they were able to break in unfazed, extract close to 300 grand and get away. But how? It ate away at me as I tweaked the feeds forward and backwards, searching for anything amiss. Then, in my periphery, I saw her. She sat there on the edge of the seating arrangement. Something felt off and I couldn't tell what, but there was something that drew me to her. She was clad in black, her hair in cascading waves around the middle of her back. It was a midsummer day, 11 a.m. by the timestamp on the video clip, and it bothered me to notice her in winter wear, complete with gloves and a fur-trimmed coat. An eccentric celebrity hiding away from the cameras? Surely not. I mean, if nothing else, her clothing warrants attention. I looked over Kurt's monitor and tried to see the woman in black through the diner's glass wall panels. I could just see her in the corner, a dark figure in the bright of daylight, seemingly trying to melt in the shadows. "You seeing anything interesting?" Kurt asked as he followed my line of sight, right to the odd woman in black. "You see her?" I said, nodding towards the edge of the screen. "Something's off," as I trailed away. "Pulling my leg, man," he replied, blinking several times, and then he gasped. "Damn." "You noticed? It's odd, isn't it?" "Nice racks. Those were at least double D's right there. You found a gem this time, Nate," he exclaimed, his voice filled with childish glee. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" "No," I replied uncertainly as I scanned the screen for the alleged double D's. I couldn't see anything, and my eyes seemed to be permanently drawn to the lone figure in black on the very corner of the screen. But then Kurt began to zoom in at the very point. He and I were seeing two very different things. Just a little more, just a little more, he muttered as he licked his bottom lip. And then I noticed what was off. No matter how much he zoomed, the figure's face couldn't be seen. It felt wrong, all sorts of wrong, as if I had just stumbled in the midst of something I should have not witnessed. I gulped as uncomfortable shivers crawled beneath my skin. All I could see were the pale, porcelain-like skin stretched across her collarbones and a flip phone on her gloved right hand. I skimmed through the different cameras in and out of the diner, and there were a total of 4. One does not have her frame in it at all, and 2 had its due of her face obscured, almost obscured by something no matter how I panned in, zoomed in. The morbid curiosity I had was suddenly tinged by an undercurrent of anxiety. Fear. It wasn't that I couldn't put a face to the figure in black, or that Kurt was seeing almost something completely different. It was because no one within the entire video seemed to see her, let alone interact with her. Waiters would pass by her table and no one would bat an eye in her direction. Only I could see her. My temples throbbed as I went to the 4th camera, my original camera, perched about 3 feet overlooking her from behind the right shoulder. It was the clearest image of her, something Kurt also saw as he practically barreled against me to get my controls. Hey, I thrusted out an arm to stop him, to drag him away from whatever that thing was. I was panicking though, and I didn't know why. Something about the whole thing made me uncomfortable, to say the least, and I just couldn't explain it. And then multiple things happened at once. At exactly 11:23 a.m. by the timestamp on the video, the dark van pulled out from the curb across the street. 4 men aligned the vehicle, armed with sawed-off shotguns. One fired in the air, causing people within the feet to jump and duck for cover. The robbers crossed the street and began brandishing their weapons threateningly, causing the diner's guests to dissolve into incoherent screams of panic. Soon, almost everyone was either standing, sweating profusely with their hands in the air, or cowering underneath the tables as the robbers leached them off their valuables. Again, save for one. Even the robbers couldn't see her. She remained motionless as she casually flipped on her phone and dialed something. Was it 911? I couldn't tell. Kurt broke free from my grasp, seemingly disinterested by what was happening in the clip, no matter how unusual it was. His fingers found the scroll button and he greedily zoomed into the figure in black. It was then that I saw the screen on her flip phone. She hadn't dialed 911 after all. It was a message. A text. It read, "You see me?" And I just received it on my cell phone. My vision spun as I threw an arm out for support. "Hey!" came Kurt's surprising yelp as my fingers dug onto his shoulder. "Dude, what's your problem? Hey, are you okay?" I tried to speak, but merely bile and water exited my mouth. I threw up sick all over the floor as Kurt tried to assist me into a chair. Somewhere in my periphery, Kurt radioed in for emergency response nurse of the building. My throat was parched and my temples throbbed, but I couldn't take my eyes off her. The feeds were now playing in reverse. Waiters walked backwards, people took out unchewed food out of their mouths and put it on their plates. And yet the woman in black was, again, casually texting, in the normal way. I grew sicker as buckets of cold sweat ran down my back. Kurt had gone to fetch the nurse as she was out of the base radio's reach. It was just me and her. Alone. My phone, which I dropped into the floor, alerted me of another message, and it was the most foolish thing I've ever done. I picked it up and I read the message. "You see me?" Through the sick and bile in my mouth, I gurgled out a miniature no. I was shivering, miniature tremors racking my body up and down and up and down. It had nothing to do with the temperature inside the control room. My teeth chattered as I stared at the message in my screen. It was sent 12 hours ago, this morning, during the robbery. I managed to stifle a whimper as I tried and failed to understand what was happening. That back, her back, and it was all I could see as the darkness closed in from all around me. It was all so unnatural. Wrong. I was getting dizzier and dizzier, and I was having a panic attack. A sudden slam against the door momentarily dragged me back to consciousness. Kurt and the nurse. They were trying to get through the magnetically locked doors, but somehow their access cards weren't working. With an unnecessarily huge amount of effort, I reached the door and tried to manually unlock it from my side. But it won't work, and of course it didn't work. What had I expected? Nothing about this was natural, and nothing about it at all was normal. I dragged myself back to my chair in front of the monitors, and just as the compass's needle was swing north, my gaze fell naturally to the figure in black. Her. This was her doing. "Who are you?" I asked the monitor screen. "What do you want?" From the feeds, the robbers had gone back to their van just beyond the curb. The robbery hadn't even begun. She merely drummed her fingers against the table in front of her rhythmically, as if waiting for something. "Who are you? Where have you come from, and what do you want from me?" I waited, and Kurt, the nurse, and several technicians were now dealing with the door. Occasionally, I would hear disgruntled slams against the paneling, but I couldn't take my eyes off her. I needed to know. And then at around 10:30 a.m., the figure began to stand. I kept my eyes glued to the screen. Big mistake. She turned towards the camera, but not normally, no. Not like a human would. The cameras were poised above her right shoulder, but she turned her neck all the way around from the left, in a motion as fast as a snake striking her prey. Within a fraction of a second, her face was against the camera. I passed out just before my brain could fully process what my eyes had seen. Maybe, luckily so, because I'm not sure I should have seen what I saw. "You into goth or something?" the disgruntled barista asked as she wiped away the counter. "No, I just needed to know if you noticed anyone clad in black loitering about the premises," I replied, scared to have my question denied and scared to have it affirmed. "What's the use of all those CCTVs you've got peppering the entire building? Don't you have one installed everywhere?" "Save for the comfort of rooms in our control room, yes," I said as the barista rolled her eyes, but I couldn't see her face from many of them. No, I saw her face, I just couldn't remember. It was my first day back from a company-mandated week-long sick leave. My first act was to come in extra early and ask around, especially the diner where the robbery took place. It was like that insistent and irresistible urge to roll your tongue over some diseased tooth. No matter how painful it got, you feel like you just gotta press on it. What I saw, and failed to see for that matter, terrified me. I still break out in a cold sweat every time someone sent me a message. I just had to get to the bottom of it. How? I didn't know how, and why? I didn't know, but I had to. So I scoured the rest of the CCTV feeds. My knees nearly went out underneath me when she began appearing in them. In all of them, no matter the date or time or place. November 26, 2010. A camera mounted on the roof deck, overlooking the grass lawn maintained by building management. A figure clad in black lurked in the corner, unmoving with her back against the camera. I scrolled through past logs and randomly clicked on a video file. October 31st, 2008. A camera overlooking the ground floor arcade. It was the building's annual Halloween party. It was almost easy to miss her in the crowd, but a figure clad in black stood in the middle of the hustle, unmoving with her back against the camera. My fingers grew numb as a cold sheen of sweat drenched my shirt. One after another, I opened log clips, and one after another, I saw the same figure. January 1st, 2007. A camera being taken down for repair after it was accidentally hit by a random firecracker the night before. Just before the technician cut the feed, the camera wobbled against the wall it was mounted to. And of course, there, standing perpendicular to the wall, was a figure in black unmoving with her back against the camera. I gulped, and the shivering returned as I moused over the very end of the file. PZT-GFFE number 1. April 24th, 2004. The first of all the building's cameras mounted just before fire exit number 1. The only means of access to the upper floors as the entire building was still under construction. Workers scaled the stairs up and down, seemingly unaware that the figure in black stood just after the fire exit door, in frame, unmoving with her back against the camera. No, not unmoving. The first few minutes into the feed, she began to walk backwards, closer and closer to the camera. In panic, I closed that window of the video clip. I put my head to my hands as bile threatened to rise up against my throat. Behind me, Kurt was cackling over some YouTube video. He seemed worlds away. The world where I was then only consisted of me and her. I pulled my face away from my hands and looked back onto the monitor screen, and I wish I hadn't. All of the other videos I opened featured the same thing, all of it. She was walking backwards towards the camera and towards me. It wasn't only me who could see her. She could see me too. I was considering to file for a transfer then, and I began to lose sleep, and I lost my appetite. Soon, the lady in black would appear everywhere. No, not just directly before me. She wasn't that kind. She appeared just in the edges of my periphery, just out of sight. In the subway and in the diners, even at home as I tucked my knees to sleep. She was there. I didn't want to see any more of her or of anything else. So at first, I began to live in darkness. I avoided light when I could, and right up to the start, I felt like a great idea. But then I realized that even in the darkness, she was present. The darkness of our human brain perceives as simply the absence of light. But she was the absence of everything, not even the dark could keep her. It was draining. The fact that someone's watching you, uncomfortable would be the century's understatement, and I'd be lying if I didn't say I was terrified gutless back then. What's after me was something unworldly. I didn't know what to do, I just felt drained. As I slept, I felt someone standing there just before my blinds, and as I drove my car to work, I couldn't bear to look in my rearview mirror, for I knew there was another passenger in the car. I tried talking to her, but she never replied. She never did anything, for that matter. That was what terrified me the most. Have you ever stood on the ledge of the topmost floor of a building? That instinctive fear of falling down. I feel that constantly, all the time, and it was just so tiring. I was so tired. I admit I began to think of ending it all. She didn't like that. One day, she just disappeared. Nothing in my periphery, nothing on reflective surfaces, nothing on my closet. She even disappeared on the camera feeds of work, where she'd usually hang out. I stopped having visions of her, of the lady in black. That foreboding feeling that she brought never vanished. If anything, it only intensified. I'd jump at the smallest sounds. I lost sleep completely. I puke out anything more than a cup of water. I was alive, but barely. Now it feels simply like I'm constantly falling, dreading the time that I would hit the pavement, but also dreading the endlessness of the fall. I lived my days in constant paranoia. It was like as if an unknown assailant had his gun constantly placed at the back of my head, not knowing when he'd pull the trigger. My work, my relationships suffered. I was reduced to, both literally and figuratively, a husk of a man who I previously was. I was empty, and the lady in the black sat and purred in the midst of that emptiness. So that one day, I decided to end it all. Back at the control room, I scoured the camera feeds out of habit, and the off chance that I would see her once more. Not her back. No. But the face of the woman. The monster who took everything away from me. First, the normalcy of life, and now, well, life itself. She was nowhere to be found. My eyes passed over the diner where it all started, and then a dull clunk echoed in my brain. The barista claimed that we had eyes all over the building, and what did I say? I whirled around the control room, my heart racing as an engine cranking up and gaining speed. She wasn't there, and I expected that. But somehow I knew exactly where to look. Somehow I knew all along where she'd be when I couldn't trace her in the camera feeds. It was a fight against my senses, against all sensibility I had left. There was no turning back. I know, but I just had to. I needed to know. I needed to see. So I looked up.